I'm Trinidadian, let's queer up gay culture. Teacher of the Year finalist withdraws after right-wing outlet publishes past leather pageant photos. A Minnesota 6th grade teacher and theater educator has withdrawn from the state's Teacher of the Year competition and is no longer employed with his school district after a right-wing outlet, Alpha News Minnesota, circulated images from his participation in a gay leather pageant, Mr. Minneapolis Eagle, in 2019. Thomas Rosengren, who worked in the Atwater-Cosmos-Grove City Public School District, was one of 11 finalists for Minnesota's Teacher of the Year award. The images show Rosengren participating in an erotically charged performance, including scenes where he appears in a cowboy hat, shirt, and jeans holding a sign and later wearing a leather harness and jockstrap while interacting with other performers. While suggestive, the images did not depict explicit sexual activity or nudity prohibited under Minnesota law. Shortly after the image came out, Rosengren withdrew from the 2026 Teacher of the Year competition. Superintendent Kip Lynk confirmed he is no longer employed with the district. Rosengren began working with the district in 2015 as a theater director and became a full-time 6th grade teacher in 2021. During his tenure, he expanded the school's theater program from 12 to more than 50 students. I'm always torn on stories like this. I do think he was in the wrong, and I'll explain why in a moment. But before I get there, I do think that people have their own personal liberty outside of their job to do, what they want to do. However, when it comes to children and a teacher-student relationship, I believe that a student should never see a teacher in a sexual way. And this was really challenged when the whole revenge porn laws were coming out, because what could happen is that you have a partner who decides to leak suggestive images, sexual images, or pornography of you to an area where he knows it's going to leak out to where students are. And then when you see your teacher in a porn, you really can't have them as a teacher anymore. It crosses a boundary, and that's no fault of the teacher. And so they figured out ways, well, maybe we just have to redistrict them, or they have to go to another school or something like that. In this case, he started in 2015. All right, this competition happened in 2019, and then he was a full-time teacher, I think, in 2022. And according to the story that I read, it appeared that those images were taken off of his Facebook. So he still might have had them on his Facebook, even though it maybe it had access to kids, maybe it didn't. I'm not sure. But regardless, when you are a teacher, you have to sign something that says you are not going to be publicly engaging in certain types of behavior. So while he was still working with students, he was in this competition where he knew he was going to be photographed, videoed, or things like that would be taken. So he knew that there was a risk. I can tell you, being on this show is a risk for me, talking about things that are sexual or whatever. I am no longer a teacher in the school system, but I'm a teacher in other ways and in other programs. So I already said to myself, if I ever get fired from those positions because I'm here speaking my mind about things, I'm okay with that, and I'm taking that risk. But he knew what kind of situation he was in, and that he wasn't supposed to do things like that, and knew what that risk was, and he did it anyways. And if it's true that it was on his Facebook and he didn't private it so that this other organization could take screenshots or whatever, or a friend of his might have, well, maybe not really a friend, but somebody who's on his Facebook could have sent it there, that's his fault.
Well, I disagree with you.
Okay.
And I think we can have a legitimate disagreement about this in perspective, but I will say Facebook, Instagram, Meta is kind of prudish. And so the fact that these pictures were on there means they weren't pornographic, they weren't lewd or showing anything that shouldn't have been. But we can disagree with that. I want to there are ways I can come at this story about personal time, which you mentioned. The fact that Leathermen are some of the kindest people. Our local IML contestants, International Mr. Leather contestants, are raising so much money and doing so much good for our community at this very moment. But I'd rather sit here and talk about something that's truly in my wheelhouse, and that's journalism. And I take a very broad view of people who want to call themselves journalists because there's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram of journalism and free speech, right? But this person is not this guy from Alpha Male Minnesota reporting, whatever it is. He is at best small J journalism. This is fag bashing. This is hurting people just for the sake of hurting people. And on that, I would like to take a moment to mention the passing of longtime Milwaukee journalist Daniel Bice. This person was so caught up in themselves. They would do stories simply to shred people that he didn't like, to drag people, to make himself feel important. And he was at a major paper. I believe he was at the Milwaukee Sentinel, which is a major outlet in Wisconsin. So I just want us to remember that just because you can put it out there doesn't make it real journalism, doesn't make it worth your time, the paper it's printed on, the Wi-Fi that is streaming it. And as far as Daniel Bice goes, I'm glad you're dead. You were a disgrace to our profession, and I'm glad you are no longer taking up column inches.
Well, getting back to the story, though, you said that you had a disagreement with me about that.
Yeah.
So what are you disagreeing about? And I'm just curious.
Well, you're talking about
if the students are able to see you in a jockstrap, is that okay?
Yeah.
For a student to see a teacher in a jockstrap?
What is the difference between, aside from perhaps, I'm going to assume it's frontal jockstrap and not ass in the back, right? What's the difference between that and what a lot of people wear at the beach? It's essentially the same amount of clothing.
I think the context is the sexual nature of it, because I think that if there was a picture of like somebody in a Speedo with their family at a beach, that's a different context than being in a leather competition with, feeding pigs and whatever the signs are and all that stuff. To me, nudity and sexuality are not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that in the sexual context, that's where a student shouldn't be seeing a teacher.
Well, and like I said, that's just a disagreement, an honest disagreement that we have. I'm just saying.
You think that's okay?
I do.
Interesting to me.
If Facebook, Meta, Instagram are allowing it, not taking it down, not flagging it, not making you private your account. I
don't think that's not the.
They are the social arbiters these days of what gets on, what's taken down.
Not when it comes to children. Viral. Let me just give you an example.
Sure.
If you're a teacher, you can't even have like pictures of you doing a keg stand, okay, like drinking and public intoxication or things that would not get flagged on social media as being bad, but you can't depict yourself that way as part of your contract as a teacher. So if you don't want to do that, you can certainly not sign on to do that job. But just letting you know that these are things that you sign on to say that you're not going to do before you even take the position. I don't know what his contract is, but
I'm going to interject here because I'm on your side on this, because the way I see it is, as even a teacher and even anybody in that matter, you are a leader in respect in the community as a teacher or anything. And when you sign up for something at the Minnesota Eagle, you're competing for a title. Mm-hmm. It's not just there for the fun of it. You're competing for a title, which means you will go to the international stage.
National press.
And that is press everywhere. That will be seen. And you have to take the onus of all this is out there now. I'm doing this as a Leatherman. All those type of things you have to take responsibility for. And when it does come, I feel, in my opinion, when it does come to children, yes, we have to take special precautions to make sure that we're not saying something that the organization we work for supports.
See, I hate this. Not your. I hate the argument that I'm about to make. I hate what I'm about to say. It's the slippery slope, because there are people, and we talk about them all the time, that are going to say, well, you put up a rainbow, you wear a shirt that says proud, but
that's not sexual in nature.
No, but that's what I'm talking about. The slippery slope is that what was once defined as just absolutely terrible and horrible, and you're going to infect our children, is now like, what the hell were you thinking? So to kink shame the leather community because somebody wants to have a career where they
Nobody's kink shaming them, though.
But that's what we are. We're saying it's okay. Okay, you can be out and wear your wedding ring and have a picture of your husband, but you can't have a picture that is absolutely acceptable. You could put on.
What we're saying is that if you are 13 years old and you're a hormonal whatever, and you are seeing your teacher in some kind of sexual, in a sling or whatever, it ruins the relationship. There is a clear distinction between a teacher and a student, and that those lines shouldn't be crossed. Now, if somebody sees you like that and they're not your student, that's a different situation. There's plenty of Nicki Minaj posters up, you know, where you're going to rock concerts, and that's what their brand is. But that Nicki Minaj is not their teacher. It's not teaching them, you know. There's in my opinion, and pretty much the ethos of all teaching is that there's a sacred relationship between teacher and student. You can't date your students. You can't, I mean, in college, even though they're both of age, you can't date your students because there's a relationship, a power dynamic. There's things there that is different than just two random people on the street.
I think we should also remember that all careers, all jobs, all professions have boundaries. So I think it's important to honor those boundaries, but I see where you're coming from, because these kids are exposed to S&M scenes in a music video. I mean, that's basically the same thing, right? People in thongs, if you see a lot of the provocative things that are everywhere. But as a teacher, you do have that, I think it's your job to respect that boundary. So I understand both points of view. Like, how far does it go towards bashing our community? If it was somebody else doing something similar, would they be equally as bashed as an LGBTQ person? So, yeah. Interesting.
Well, there is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.